In the quiet town of Salem, Massachusetts, where Victorian mansions line the streets and history lingers in every cobblestone, an extraordinary discovery stirred a long-forgotten mystery. The year was 2025, and antique dealer Rebecca Martinez was no stranger to history's hidden remnants. After more than 2 decades attending estate sales across New England, she had grown accustomed to dusty relics and faded treasures. Yet nothing prepared her for the eerie attraction she felt toward a Victorian mansion sealed for over a century, the Whitmore estate. Inside that dimly lit hallway, Rebecca's eyes were drawn to an ornate wooden frame hanging quietly on the wall. Inside it was a family portrait dating back to 1890, a seemingly typical late 19th century Victorian family captured in their Sunday best. The father, Edmund Whitmore, stood proudly behind his seated wife, Catherine, while their 3 children, Margaret, 14, William, 12, and Emma, 8, were arranged around them. At first glance, the photo seemed just like the many others Rebecca had seen. But on closer inspection, something was profoundly off. Most photographs from this era were grainy, blurred, the faces often stoic due to long exposure times. However, this image was unnervingly clear. The children's expressions were tense, almost fearful. The youngest girl's eyes glanced away from the camera, unsettlingly distant. The mother's hand was blurred, as if trembling. Every detail, the clothing, the elaborate furniture, even the wallpaper, was captured with extraordinary clarity, as if the camera had trapped a moment not meant to be preserved. But the most chilling discovery emerged when Rebecca focused on a large, ornate mirror hanging behind the family. The glass reflection revealed something terrifying. Shadowy figures dressed in dark clothing, holding objects resembling restraints, standing behind where the photographer would have been. It was as though the family was being watched, threatened, held captive, while forced to pose for this photograph. With trembling hands, Rebecca reached out to Dr. James Harrison, a historian specializing in 19th century photography at Harvard University. Skeptical yet intrigued, Dr. Harrison examined the photograph using professional equipment. He confirmed the authenticity and date of the image, but grew increasingly grave as the disturbing details became undeniable. The children's clothes appeared hastily donned, buttons were misaligned, and the youngest girl's dress was creased as if she had been dressed under duress. On the father's wrists, faint marks suggested rope burns or bindings. Driven to understand the haunting image's context, Dr. Harrison researched the Whitmore family history. Edmund Whitmore had been a wealthy textile manufacturer who accumulated his fortune during the Industrial Revolution's peak. His wife hailed from a respected Boston lineage. The family had lived in their lavish Salem mansion since 1885, raising 3 children in apparent comfort. Yet beneath the surface of prosperity lay growing turmoil. Newspaper archives from October 1890 revealed a shocking truth. The Whitmore family had vanished without a trace. They made front-page news in Boston publications for weeks. Their home was found unlocked, untouched. There was no sign of a struggle. It was as if the family had simply stepped out and disappeared forever. No bodies, no ransom notes, no witnesses, only silence blanketing their existence. Dr. Harrison's discoveries led him to Detective Sarah Chen, a cold case specialist with the Massachusetts State Police, known for her expertise in investigating historical crimes. Upon seeing the photograph and learning the story, Sarah decided to open an unofficial investigation. The photograph's exceptional quality now hinted at grim purposes. It was not a mere family keepsake, but perhaps chilling evidence of violence, documentation of captivity, forced and orchestrated. Modern forensic analysis, with advanced digital enhancement technologies, confirmed that the figures in the mirror were not accidental reflections, but real human shapes, captors restraining someone just outside the frame. Even more, faint scratches walking across the photo's ornate frame spelled out a desperate plea. "Help us." This encoded message was likely made by a terrified family member desperate for rescue. Unlike typical Victorian portraits, where subjects sat still for the long shutter exposure, this photo froze a fleeting moment filled with fear and struggle. Micro-expressions betrayed the family's terror. Sarah theorized this image was a gruesome trophy, an instrument of intimidation used by powerful creditors to control defaulters through violence. Further research revealed Edmund Whitmore's textile business was crumbling amid labor disputes, financial mismanagement, and mounting debt. He had borrowed heavily from unscrupulous investors with possible ties to organized crime. Throughout the months before the disappearance, threatening letters warned him to repay debts or face dire consequences. One letter ominously threatened to make an example of the Whitmores as a warning to others. One of those creditors, Marcus Crane, was a respected Boston photographer, renowned for his portraits and innovative techniques. Yet financial strain forced Crane into dubious work, photographing foreclosure properties and inventory for debt collectors. Mysteriously, Crane vanished shortly after the Whitmores disappeared, deepening the dark puzzle. Investigative work uncovered letters from Crane's wife revealing fear and coercion. Crane had been pressured into photographing the Whitmores during their captivity to assure creditors of their control. Facing threats against his family and conscience, Crane disappeared, his fate unknown. The photograph became a symbol of this brutal collusion of crime, coercion, and despair during America's industrial rise. The investigation uncovered evidence of multiple similar cases where defaulting families vanished without a trace. A network of wealthy businessmen allegedly orchestrated these disappearances, using intermediaries like Crane to document their power. The photographic evidence became a permanent record of their ruthlessness. Despite the passage of more than 130 years, the story of the Whitmore family has finally been pieced together through meticulous historical work. A memorial service held for distant relatives marked the recognition and acknowledgement of the family's tragic fate. The photograph that began as a curiosity in an antique shop has become crucial in solving one of Massachusetts's oldest cold cases, and a landmark example of the power of modern technology to illuminate the darkest stories of the past. This haunting portrait remains a testament to human resilience and the importance of seeking justice, no matter the passage of time. It tells us that behind every faded photograph lies a voice yearning to be heard and a story desperate to be remembered. The story of the Whitmore family begins in an era of prosperity and social prestige in late 19th century America, an epoch defined by rapid industrialization, vast fortunes, and societal pressures. The Whitmores were no ordinary family. Edmund Whitmore, the patriarch, had wrestled his way up from humble beginnings into the head of a thriving textile manufacturing enterprise headquartered in Massachusetts. His wife, Catherine, hailed from a respected Bostonian family with deep roots in commerce and culture. Their union symbolized a merging of old-world dignity and new-world ambition. By 1890, the Whitmore mansion stood as a symbol of that success, a grand Victorian structure with high ceilings, carved wood, and panoramic views of Salem's bustling harbor. The home was a veritable museum of wealth and taste, decorated with imported furnishings, intricate patterns on handmade wallpapers, and portraits capturing the family's image in timeless permanence. Yet beneath this facade, the tranquil elegance of the Whitmore household slowly began to unravel. Edmund's textile factory had initially flourished, but by the late 1880s, the industry faced fierce competition and collapsing markets. Textile mills throughout New England shuttered or were consolidated under larger corporate interests. Edmund, attempting to hold his empire together, took on heavy loans and risky partnerships. Creditors pressed hard, and whispers of unpaid debts and compromised ethics began circulating in Salem's society pages and between business circles. The stress was palpable within the family. Letters discovered in the mansion, yellowing with age, revealed increasing desperation. Financial ledgers showed growing deficits, and Edmund's handwriting grew sloppier, a stark contrast to the meticulous penmanship of previous years. Family correspondences hinted at strained relations, and ghostly shadows in the photograph seemed to echo those tensions. Margaret, the oldest child at 14, was a bright girl with dreams of higher education, a scarce opportunity for women at the time. William and Emma, younger and more innocent, clung to their mother Catherine for comfort. Local newspapers from early 1890 mentioned the family's engagement in charity events and social functions. Yet reporters noted a certain distance in their demeanor, a visible weight behind carefully composed smiles. In September of 1890, Thornton & Sons Bank called in many outstanding debts. Edmund was granted a short grace period, but rumors surfaced of imminent foreclosure. The family's status was threatened, which in that era could lead to social ruin. With pride intact and options dwindling, the Whitmores seemed trapped in a gilded cage. On the evening of October 12th, reports detail the Whitmore family hosting a dinner in their mansion. Neighbors recalled a lively gathering with music and laughter echoed through the night. But when dawn broke the next day, the house was silent and empty. Doors unlocked, meals half finished on the grand oak table, and no sign of any family member was found. The loyal housekeeper, Mrs. Agnes Carter, was missing as well, last seen preparing for breakfast. An immediate search was launched. Police scoured the grounds and nearby woods. No footprints, no distress signals, no traces of struggle or departure. It was as if the entire household had vanished into thin air. The house remained untouched for weeks, and local curiosity soon turned to fear. The Whitmores became a sensation, a mysterious disappearance that surpassed mere scandal and entered the territory of the unexplained. What made this case even stranger was the discovery that the family's photograph, preserved in the dusty mansion, told a different, more sinister story. Strange markings on the photograph's edges suggested a careful masking of some details. Handwritten annotations, discovered years later between layers of the photograph's mounting, included cryptic phrases like "held captive" and "prisoners within their own home." These messages evoked chilling questions. Was the Whitmore disappearance a coerced abduction born of dire financial desperation? Or were darker, more malevolent forces at work? Technology of the era provided few answers. the nascent police force was ill-equipped to deal with such mysteries. Meanwhile, societal norms discouraged public discussion of anything that could tarnish a family's name. Many speculated about the involvement of debt collectors wielding brutal influence behind closed doors, shadow figures who might employ intimidation or worse to extract payment. Later investigations uncovered that the photographer, Marcus Crane, whose studio was just blocks from the mansion, disappeared shortly after the Whitmores vanished. His abrupt absence added intrigue. Before disappearing, Crane was known for photographing prominent families in Salem, but had recently begun working with creditors and insurers, assessing property foreclosures. It is widely believed, though never proven, that he was compelled to photograph the Whitmore family in captivity, creating a twisted proof of possession for their creditors. Historical research tied the Whitmores' disappearance to a broader pattern. Across Massachusetts and neighboring states, accounts surfaced of similar affluent families disappearing under suspicious circumstances, often just before financial ruin. This suggested an orchestrated campaign of disappearing debtors, possibly linked to organized crime syndicates, exploiting the financial chaos of the industrial age. While the Whitmore family's fate remains officially unknown to this day, the chilling clarity of that old photograph, discovered over a century later, casts new light on their story. The image is not simply a family portrait. It is a frozen moment of terror, a silent scream captured in fading ink and glass, urging those who see it to remember that even the most revered and wealthy were vulnerable to the dark forces lurking behind the rise of American industry and capitalism. As modern forensic historians continue to study this case and apply emerging techniques, the Whitmore family story serves as a poignant reminder. Behind every photograph lies a human tale, often more complex and harrowing than it seems at first glance. It is this tale of vanished wealth, hidden threats, and silent pleas for help, told through the haunting faces in a dusty old photograph, that we are about to unravel. The Whitmore family portrait, once examined as a simple relic by antique dealer Rebecca Martinez, quickly transformed into a chilling document of a dark and violent chapter in American history. The forensic revelations unearthed through modern technology peeled back layers of mystery, showing this photograph as more than a family keepsake. It was possibly a cryptic message, a record of captivity, and a silent cry for help, frozen in 19th century silver gelatin. Expert digital analysts, led by cold case specialist Detective Sarah Chen, embarked on the painstaking process of enhancing and analyzing the photograph with cutting-edge imaging tools. Every tiny detail was scrutinized, the fabric textures, the children's expressions, and, most hauntingly, the mirror reflection that revealed shadowy figures who seemed to be restraining or threatening someone beside the camera. As the image was magnified, investigators discovered faint but deliberate scratches on the wooden frame of the mirror. When viewed under specific lighting, the scratches spelled out a desperate plea. "Help us." This hidden message indicated that someone within the family or environment was attempting to communicate their peril without alerting their captors. The photo had been taken under duress, a horrid trophy meant to prove control and send a warning to others. Aside from the message, the details within the photo suggested a complex orchestration. The clothing of Margaret, William, and Emma appeared hastily put on, with crooked buttons and wrinkled dresses, inconsistent with the care usually invested in Victorian formal portraits. On the father's wrists, rope burns and marks hinted at physical restraint. These signs painted a picture of a family not only trapped, but forced into submission. Historical analysis unveiled more about the man behind the camera, Marcus Crane. Known for photographing Boston's high society, Crane's reputation had dimmed due to financial troubles. Court records from 1889 indicated several arrests related to debts, and letters exchanged with his wife revealed his growing fear and coercion by shadowy figures. Within days of the Whitmore family's disappearance, Marcus vanished, never to be heard from again. His work on foreclosure property inventories linked him directly to the creditors wielding power over families like the Whitmores. Police and historians found that Marcus had been forced to use his photography as a tool of intimidation, documenting captives under creditor coercion for this network's internal records. Far from art, these images served as brutal proof of dominance, erasing human dignity. The exceptional quality of the Whitmore photo, unlike typical hurried documentation, was probably meant to be an intimidating emblem. As Sarah Chen extended her investigation, she uncovered unsettling evidence that the Whitmore family's disappearance was not an isolated event. Several wealthy families who defaulted on loans with the same creditor network had vanished under suspicious circumstances during the 1880s and 1890s. Each family showed patterns of mounting threats, isolation from neighbors, and eventual disappearance without trace. Hidden photographs and personal belongings found in the abandoned empires of these families suggested a systematic effort to silence or erase indebted households. The victims were collateral damage in a ruthless enterprise run by a group of powerful businessmen who masked their extortion and violence behind legal facades and legitimate corporate fronts. They hired professionals, from lawyers to photographers, to intimidate and control debtors. The seizure of assets was often accompanied by threats so severe that entire families disappeared as warnings to others. It was a reign of terror against the vulnerable, personified by the Whitmore tragedy. The photograph and the diary of Margaret Whitmore, found decades later, finally gave these victims a voice. Margaret's trembling final journal entries described strange visitors, threats against her father, and the impenetrable fear that early October night. She poignantly asked to be remembered as we were, not as they want us to look. Those words echo across time, forcing present generations to confront the brutal legacy of unchecked greed and cruelty hidden beneath the glamour of America's industrial age. The Whitmore family photograph stands today not just as a relic, but as a symbol, a reminder of the power of evidence preserved, no matter how long it takes, to unveil historical crimes, humanize victims, and demand justice. Contemporary cold case units have since adopted similar forensic methodologies pioneered during this investigation, solving many more long-forgotten mysteries and restoring lost histories to the light. Our journey into this photograph is a journey into deeper truths about family, fear, and the shadows of power that persist through time. It invites us to look beyond the surface and listen closely for the silent cries hidden deep within history's forgotten moments. The story of the Whitmore family cannot be fully understood without delving deep into the tumultuous financial and social landscape of late 19th century America. It was an era characterized by rapid industrialization, sweeping economic changes, and the dark undercurrents of greed, power, and often ruthless business practices. The Whitmore's rise amidst this upheaval was mirrored by a precipitous fall shaped by forces both visible and hidden. By the 1880s, Edmund Whitmore's textile empire, once a symbol of success and innovation, showed signs of distress. Textile mills throughout New England faced fierce competition from newer factories in the South that offered cheaper labor and more modern machinery. Demand fluctuated wildly, and market prices plummeted. Edmund's attempts to navigate this turbulent market forced him to rely heavily on loans from a shadowy consortium of investors. These investors operated with a mix of legitimate finance and criminal coercion, their power stretching beyond mere numbers on ledgers and into personal threats and violence. The Whitmores were not alone in this predicament. Records uncovered by Detective Sarah Chen revealed at least 6 other wealthy families during this period had similarly vanished after defaulting on debts secured through this murky financial network. Many of these families' homes contained hidden photographs and personal belongings, indicating systematic intimidation and suppression of witnesses. The disappearance of these families followed eerily similar patterns: increasing threats, isolation, and sudden vanishing without trace. The shadowy figures in the Whitmore photograph, presumed captors, were likely agents or enforcers employed by this group to maintain control over indebted families. Photographer Marcus Crane, who disappeared shortly after the Whitmores, was probably coerced into documenting the captivity of these families to provide evidence of compliance and serve as warnings to others. This usage of photography as a tool of extortion was chilling and unprecedented, transforming art into a weapon. The investigation unveiled the brutal business of debt collection in the late 19th century. One found ledger contained references to special arrangements made with families who had failed to meet payments, euphemisms for forced disappearances. Members of the credit group used legitimate business facades to cover illicit activities that included threats, surveillance, and, in extreme cases, the disappearance or murder of debtors. The Whitmores became victims caught in this malignant web. Margaret Whitmore's diary entries provide the human voice within these cold transactions. Her final writings describe a household gripped by fear, visited repeatedly by unknown men, forbidden from leaving or even speaking to neighbors. The diary's last entry, penned on the day the photograph was taken, reveals the family's dread of facing what happens next, fearing they would not see another sunrise. The sinister depths of this network extended beyond the individual families. Some descendants of the original creditors later became prominent figures in Boston society, their families quietly sanitizing history to conceal these dark origins. Meanwhile, the Whitmore estate remained sealed for decades, a tomb preserving secrets only now being unlocked by forensic science and painstaking historical work. Challenges remain. No formal charges were ever filed due to the passage of time, legal limitations, and a scarcity of direct evidence. Yet the exposure of these crimes created significant scandal, prompting donations to victim rights organizations and renewed interest in cold cases related to organized crime during the industrial expansion era. The Whitmore family now symbolizes the victims of this ruthless chapter in American history. Ultimately, this chapter of the Whitmore story reveals a tangled intersection of wealth, debt, power, and violence. It exposes the human cost of rapid industrialization and the dark strategies employed to maintain financial dominion. The family's portrait, once a simple keepsake, stands as both a memorial and a warning, a testament to lives sacrificed in the shadows of progress. The Whitmore family case, steeped in both mystery and tragedy, extends beyond a simple disappearance. It is a revelation about power, betrayal, and the devastating impact financial greed can have on innocent lives. Though the events transpired in 1890, the quest for justice has transcended centuries, involving historians, forensic experts, and law enforcement committed to unveiling truth concealed by time. Detective Sarah Chen's Cold Case Unit undertook the unprecedented task of reopening such ancient cases using advanced forensic technologies. By digitally enhancing the infamous Whitmore photograph, patterns and clues invisible to the human eye resurfaced, providing vital new leads to historical crimes that were once considered unsolvable. This breakthrough spurred investigations into several other families who vanished under eerily similar circumstances, revealing a chilling network of intimidation and murder, orchestrated by ruthless creditor syndicates during America's Gilded Age. The impact of this research was profound. Not only did it shed light on the fate of the Whitmore family, but it also led to the discovery of 6 other families who had disappeared after becoming entangled with the same criminal organization. These investigations uncovered hidden photographs, personal artifacts, and legal documents that pieced together a bleak picture of systematic violence camouflaged beneath respectable business operations. While legal constraints prevented formal prosecutions due to the passage of time and lost evidence, exposing these crimes caused a significant scandal among descendants of involved parties. Many of these descendants, previously unaware of their ancestors' dark legacies, quietly made substantial donations to victim advocacy organizations, acknowledging the suffering endured generations ago. Recognizing the importance of preserving this history, state historical societies collaborated with investigative teams to archive the Whitmore photograph alongside Margaret Whitmore's poignant diary, which eloquently narrated the family's terror and final days. Memorial services were held, attended by distant relatives who had no idea of the true circumstances under which their ancestors disappeared. Through collective memory and scientific inquiry, the family was finally honored not as mere victims frozen in time, but as human beings whose tragic end demands remembrance and justice. Moreover, the Whitmore case became a landmark in historical crime research, demonstrating the power of interdisciplinary collaboration. Techniques pioneering digital enhancement and forensic analysis of historical photographs set new standards adopted by cold case units globally. The Massachusetts State Police, inspired by these successes, established a dedicated cold case unit focusing exclusively on historical disappearances and unsolved crimes, with Sarah Chen appointed as director. In the antiques and historical artifact community, Rebecca Martinez's ethical advocacy furthered best practices in handling potentially criminologically significant items. Her efforts ensured artifacts linked to crimes receive proper attention from law enforcement and historians, preventing such items from becoming mere curiosities without context. The Whitmore family photograph, originally just a beautifully preserved image found in an estate sale, now stands as an enduring symbol of the importance of seeking justice across generations. It reminds us that behind every artifact lies a human story, sometimes of unspeakable horror, resilience, and the relentless human spirit that refuses to let the past be forgotten. This story is not just about a vanished family, but about the long shadow that injustice casts, and the tireless pursuit required to bring light even to centuries-old crimes. The Whitmore family's voice, once silenced, now echoes through history, compelling us to listen, remember, and seek truth, no matter how deeply it is buried.